Ward 7 Council of Town Markham. First of all, I'd like to thank you, all the panelists who came out this Sunday afternoon and doing the wonderful job. I also thank you to John. You are not a stranger to the town of Markham. You are not a just conservative, you are a compassionate conservative. I don't have a problem with that. My first question is, the Greater Toronto area has one of the highest concentration of ethnic diversity in Canada. However, our major media outlet lacks sensible coverage of events around the world that connect with diaspora population in the GTA. Particularly in Markham and the York region, for example, there is a national issue like to Asian, for example, like hundreds of thousands of Tamils is doing the human chain down the street, Toronto for the fight for the human rights. However, the media failed to acknowledge the aspiration, and that's a fact. Listening to the communities and going to the communities. Instead of the aspiration, they were negatively reported. That is another the worst part of what the media's responsibility. So my question is to the panel: what are your strategy to outcome the mistrust and disconnection with the media and the diverse community?
So
I have two questions, John.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Other question is the global media. Gentleman was talking about media as a business, as a reporter as a business. That's why my biggest concern is the media concentration. The media concentration, news and the media are no longer fulfilling their moral duty that they should be. Media is known as one of the most powerful tools, but media concentration will be known as the most dangerous. For example, some of the major medias is buying the other small medias, even they're buying the ethnic medias. There's no diverse opinion. Same board of practice. And there's no chance to have the diverse expression or diverse opinion in that powerhouse. We're talking about the media's management and media boardroom. When the media outlet are bought by the large company and corporation, the interest is changed to monetary view as opposed to be compassionate and ethical point of view. How are you planning to put this step? That was my other concern.
Two gigantic issues there.
Thank you.
But thank you for those. Let's start with the first then, which had to do again with this issue, sort of not dissimilar entirely to the comment made over here about how, pick the example the gentleman used about the Tamil chain and so forth. I actually myself thought that there was a fair bit of coverage of why people were doing that, but there was a certain negative spin to it because of the fact University Avenue, remember, was closed and people were saying it inconvenienced people and so on and so on. So the question really is, what can we do about making sure that all of these things that involve groups that may not be as well understood in terms of their issues, what's causing them to do it, are portrayed in a balanced way and an informed way, and that in turn the media informs people of why these issues are happening and all sides of it. Anybody want to comment?
It's, to your point earlier, it's the quality of the journalism. If you are assigned to cover the Sri Lankan protest story in the morning, and you have no knowledge whatsoever until you go out there, and you talk to people just on site in that moment, at that time, and come back and write the story, your perspective is going to be this one. If you took some time going into it to understand the interview, to understand the issues, then the questions you would ask would be a lot designed to elicit the real point of view, a few more points of view, and give you a sort of a larger scope in terms of understanding the story. So it's the quality of the work that the journalist does and the time they have in which to do it that makes a difference in how the story is reported. Now, you mentioned the Sri Lankan protest story, which I thought received a lot of coverage.
It did.
Yeah, and the other part of it was negative because it blocked traffic and it was a big headache. Now, that's got nothing to do with the political aspirations of anyone. It was a fact. It created chaos downtown and that became a story. So I don't see that as detracting from the Sri Lankan protest. I don't see that as the media going off on a tangent. It was another part of the story that we reported on. But to jump back to it, if we don't do our homework, then we won't find out the necessary relevant information, and the digging or the journalism we do will be about this deep.
Anybody else want to comment on that first part, and then we'll come to media concentration?
Can I just add?
Yes, go ahead.
I want to add to that,
Please.
and that is that the job that the journalist does in this era has to involve a conversation on social media as well. So you talked about, the stat that you found that racialized people or visible minorities are on Twitter more, on using social media more than their white counterparts. And if that's the case, then if you want to have a conversation and you get assigned the story in the morning, it's time to then spread that network and have a conversation with your audience. And ask them, well, this is the story that I'm doing. What do you think? What do you think I should be looking at? What do you think's been missing so far in the coverage? And then you'll have hopefully a richer story by the end of the day for this, audience participation that's unprecedented that we're allowed to have now.
And I think it also speaks to the need for more diversity in newsrooms for people who would understand the Sri Lankan situation. I think that's very important. And while we go on the tangent, yes, we on both sides, we need frontline reporters who are diverse. We also need guys in the executive suite who are diverse. But certainly, from our onus, we can certainly do a lot more. I think, just from a frontline perspective, I'll give you a very simple example. I had lunch earlier this year with Meg Tilly. And she's an actress. She was nominated.
Canada, and so I think the advice. I don't know that I would. I would think that with mainstream media it would be, look, if you're going to address issues that deal with multiple communities, please do so within a Canadian context. Apply the same standards that you would on any story. So if you're going to talk about the Tamil community, you have to allow the narrative to go back and forth as you would with any other story that you report. But if you're not familiar with the Tamil community, you run the risk of misrepresenting them. Right. And when you misrepresent them, then what happens is that other communities also shy away, and it just causes friction, which is unnecessary, because quite frankly, I think that, for the most part, nobody really puts an article out to discriminate. Right? Nobody wants that kind of backlash. It's mistakes that we make. It's using that superficial approach that, the widest audience doesn't really care about what the Tamils do. But when you put all of the communities together, they outnumber what the typical white male would want. And so I think it's time that we stopped, we started bringing silos down, but it starts at the grassroots also. We need to also say, how do we talk to one another? How do we say things to each other without stepping on toes? I don't want to look at you and fear that if I said something that I didn't like about your personality, that you might think it has to do with your skin color. And so it starts with me, it starts with you to say, no, really, I'm interested on Canadian issues just like you are, because I live here, I work here, and I don't want to be portrayed in the media the wrong way, and so I want to have an opportunity to write the narrative with you.
I understand that, but the thing is, when you say Canadian content, we appreciate that. For example, I can give you a thing, if I were to go and win, if I cure cancer tomorrow, I would say, Canadian found a cure. But if I were to do something bad, they're going to say, a Tamil Canadian has done that.
That's exactly right. You're absolutely right. So when we talk about a successful doctor who's of Tamil extraction, we say a Canadian doctor. But when we're talking about a Tamil, committing a crime, then that's Canadian. And we need to stop that. It's no different than, 30 years ago, the mafia was Italian. No, crimes that are committed on Canadian soil are Canadian crimes. But we make that mistake too. We make that mistake too, and we make those mistakes in our newspapers and language. We make those mistakes the way we label each other in community, because it's almost like saying, well, I'm Tamil, so if I say it, it's okay, and I'm of Italian origin. No, it's not okay, because when you say it, I'm going to respect you, and I'm just going to mimic what you say. I'm going to say, right.
Yeah, I understand because even like an incident in Mexico happened. There was a Woodbridge couple. Automatically, when you say Woodbridge, they didn't say it's a Canadian happened. It must be a mob hit, stereotyping.
That's
thing.
right.
That's what we wanted to see the change. And I'm willing. I'm very happy to see that a CEO like yourself in the mainstream media are willing to change and listen to the thing. And if you want Canadian content, like I'm sure the ethnic media, we are willing to share the content with you so the messages get across as the Canadian, true Canadian message.
Yes,